Hello, everybody. Welcome along, Cricket Badger podcast. It's been a while, hasn't it? Hello out there, all the badgers around the UK and around the world. And we join you today. It's Phil and Mark alongside me, James, and we're going to be talking a bit about England and New Zealand, England's Test squad they've picked, and merging that into a chat as we go through about the first half of the County Championship season. How that has gone, and how we see that going forwards. And I guess the strength of the county championship with all of the comments about franchising it and what have you. I'm sure there's plenty to talk about as we go through this. But let's start off with the England-New Zealand Test series coming up. And Mark, I think a lot of people thought, well, Rob Key coming in as director of cricket, you've got a new head coach in Brendan McCullum, and then you've got a new captain in Ben Stokes. That would automatically lead us to a revolution and a complete fresh load of fresh faces in that squad. As it turns out, there's only Potts of Durham in the bowling department and Harry Brook, who's forced his way into the batting conversation. That's any different, really. Was that a surprise to you?
No, it wasn't a surprise to me, actually. I think apparently they're going to go to a national selector. They haven't got a national selector in place yet. Brendan McCullum wasn't even in the country when they picked the side, or he was in isolation. Stokes has just got the job. Key just got his job. I can't see any of them really watched a huge amount of county cricket this season, if I'm being honest. So I think a conservative choice was always going to be the choice. I think the injuries to all the strike bowlers have not helped. Obviously, Anderson and Broad are back in, quite rightly so. In terms of the batting, I think Crawley's a lucky boy. In terms of the bowling, I think Craig Overton is lucky as well. But I think what they're looking at is, okay, yeah, there's been a run fest in the county championship, but if we take the last Test series in West Indies, Crawley did get a ton in the second Test. Jack Leach, probably bowled as, got some control and bowled a lot of overs and improved as time went by. Craig Overton, okay, didn't do so well, but he deserves a run in England. So I think all those kind of, well, they did okay in the West Indies. I know we didn't win, but we need to give them the chance over here. Obviously, Lee's that are running the West Indies. So I think it was quite predictable, really. Obviously, I would have liked someone like Parkinson to get a go, but that's a perennial thing. And if I'm being honest with you, a lot of runs have been scored in the championship. But how you decipher on some of the tracks we've been playing on how much store you placed by those runs, I don't know. And a lot of the batsmen are much of a muchness. So I think it was inevitable to come to a conservative conclusion. And Matt McCullum, when he comes over, will probably start working from this point and see how we go.
I think McCullum said in the past, when he took over at KKR and in the Caribbean, in his other two coaching jobs, he said, I kind of watched, I got my feet under the table, a bit like Eric Ten Hag. I saw his press conference for Manchester United today. Yeah, I'm analysing, I'm just kind of observing at the moment. And then after you've kind of soaked up all the information, you then make a few decisions, don't you? And I imagine Brendan McCullum will be no different when it comes to coaching England. Phil was, I don't think Ben Stokes was any surprise. He wasn't necessarily my choice, but then I'm obviously a revolutionary, forward-thinking, incredible person. But Ben Stokes was pretty obvious vice captain, and the only other player in the team really that was guaranteed to be picked. So that wasn't particularly astonishing, was it? But Rob Key is the director of cricket and Brendan McCullum as the head coach for the Test team. Either of those two surprise you?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, both of them are a surprise. Rob Key is a surprise because I think Mark's made this point repeatedly. He doesn't seem to tick many of the declared criteria, but I mean, we don't know how he interviewed, what he's offering. I mean, he comes across as a pundit. He's fantastic.
I mean,
straight
just
talking.
just on that, Phil. I mean, Mark set himself up on our WhatsApp group as the HR department, and you're obviously in the legal profession. If you advertise a job and you obviously have the factors that you want people to tick the boxes for as part of the job description, if you don't get that many applicants and you are desperately keen to actually employ somebody quickly because you need to get the show on the road, is Rob Key the only possible appointment, or are we being harsh on him?
I don't know. We know that Gary Kirsten interviewed. Do we know who else interviewed?
Gary Kirsten interview for the
No,
director?
sorry, no, he didn't. Sorry, that's for McCullum's role. Who else interviewed with Rob Key? It's
I
hard
don't
to
know.
know.
Marcus North interviewed, but he dropped out.
Yeah. So, I mean, if assuming that they're the people that got through to the final round, then, I mean, he sounds like the most likely candidate, but, people have been prepared to employ me. I'm not quite sure why. I seem to have got away with it. So, I mean,
that's the best point you've ever made on this podcast.
Exactly. Yeah. Look, when he talks cricket, he seems to talk common sense. He's been in and around the game. The difficulty, I think, for him is the lack of direct coaching experience. But then at this level, should he be coaching? It's not about technicals at this point, surely. It's about man management. It's about processes. It's about giving the team the very best opportunities. It's almost administrator, isn't it? Really, it's more administration than cricket at this stage.
I think, Mark. I kind of went through it initially, and I thought this is really weird because Ben Stokes is only captain once, I think, in red ball cricket. Brendan McCullum's never coached in red ball cricket. Rob Key's never had a position like that, but. Maybe this is what England needs. We've gone down the route of the blokes that have got the ties on and fit the bill. Could this be a refreshing change?
Well, we'll soon find out, won't we? I think the Guardian guy, Barney Roney, kind of wrote a very good piece about, how we'd gone from the ties to the marketing men to the blokes, and we were all into yoga and getting the mental health stuff and all the rest of it. So we'll see. I mean, to a certain degree, Key does not fit the essential criteria. Neither does McCullum. Maybe they should have re-advertised. I don't know, but the fact is they're in the jobs now. We hope they do well. It could be,
but if they've gone down your route, Mark, of re-advertising, we could still be sat here in September with no suitable.
So I mean, but I think the thing that worries me is that they make such a song and dance about equality, diversity, and inclusion. The first big jobs that they actually advertise, they don't follow any of the procedures, which is fine if you just use headhunters and say, well, we're just looking for the best candidate. But once you advertise it and say these are the essential criteria, and then you give people the jobs who haven't got the essential criteria, it just makes a mockery of it. But I'm not going to go. There's no point in arguing about that. Key's got the job. McCullum's got the job. I hope they do well. I mean, I think Rob Key. I think Phil's right. Rob Key talks a lot of sense as a commentator.
I've heard him interviewed a lot. Nasser Hussain did a very good interview with him after he'd been appointed, and asked him. Yeah, I think as they trust each other, obviously, as having worked together, and so he asked him the hard questions, and all of his answers made a lot of sense. I think we've got a chord here, haven't we? They may not have been the choices we'd have made, but we wish them well because they're in situ and they're going to do the job.
Yeah, I wish him well. I think Key genuinely sounds like a good guy. Sounds like he knows the game. I don't think he's going to make any snap judgments about the county game. He's a big fan of the 100, but most of them are. McCullum, he's an experienced Test match captain. He did a great job in New Zealand. And he might be a punt in the dark, but as you say, it may well. They've been down every other avenue, haven't they? So why not? I mean, why not? Give it a go and see what happens.
You say Rob Key's a fan of the 100. They're always fans of the 100 when they're in the skybox. He might be different now he's out of it. Well, proof will be in the pudding as we go through, won't it? Because I'm sure he's going to be involved in discussions at the very least in terms of the future structure of the English county scene. In terms of the actual players and the personnel, then not a huge surprise about who was picked, but I get the impression, as we've said, that this is almost like last chance saloon for a few of these guys, Phil. This is your chance now. Go out there. You haven't got the excuse of COVID bubbles. Rob Key's been quite big on how that's affected them, particularly during the Ashes, and as a mitigating factor and as an excuse. But he said, we've got to the stage now where there aren't any excuses left. This is now a fresh summer. Go out there and show what you can do. And this is their test now. This is their chance, isn't it?
I'm not sure it is the last chance for people. I'm not sure. We've gone from. I remember back when I was a kid, we would change lineups from one test to the next, and you really had one chance to go and get
Fred Truman.
Back in the day, yeah. But now people, I think it's gone a bit too much the other way. I'm not sure there's enough jeopardy in performances because enough jeopardy in performing below par because there's a few of them
I'll
have
ask
been
you about
getting
that
away with it.
because somebody I suggested a couple of changes. To be honest, a lot of me is in agreement with Mark that it makes sense at the moment to pick largely the same people, and see how it goes. But somebody said to me, "Well, you can't make too many changes. They're all centrally contracted. You're paying them a fortune. You're flushing the money down the toilet if you don't pick them." Central contracts, I think, have a very big upside, but there's also the downside that they can be a bit cozy, Phil.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the nail on the head. You're financially committed to these players, and at least for the term of that contract, it doesn't matter how they perform. I mean, well, actually, I suppose there may be terms in there we're not aware of, but I'm not aware of any player that's lost their central contract because of their lack of form.
I think they get drops and then they lose it when they come to renegotiate them in the autumn, don't they?
Yeah, but that. Yes, it does. Well, I suppose anybody you want someone to have the comfort of knowing that they are financially sound and they're not in a precarious position. Otherwise, you end up with instances like noble spot fixing, etc. So and perhaps undue pressure on players. But where we are at the moment, it does seem very comfortable, and I think it's very comfortable with both bat and ball, where individuals seemingly have got endless chances. And I don't know if it's in my impatience as a fan. This might be the series in which Ollie Robinson steps up or Craig Overton looks more menacing. But I do wonder again. It's all well and good. We'll chuck the ball to Chris Wokes and he'll perform at home again, and then we'll pick him for an away tour and it won't work again. I just, it's getting a little bit monotonous now having the same players in. And with the new regime that's come in, it would have been nice to have seen a few more fresh faces just to have that, bring that energy into the group. Because I mean, it's been a bit more. I'd said on the group when you suggested a podcast, I think last week, that I'm grumpy. I'm not in the best place for cricket at the moment, and the England squad was a bit disappointing. The way they announced it, so you had to sign up
I
so
didn't
they
like
could
that.
harvest all your data. That just pissed me off even more, quite frankly. And it's there's just a bit of a stink around it at the moment. I'm hoping that Key, I like McCullum. I quite like his attitude. I like the way he comes across. I hope that presents itself in the way he sets the team up, and because I am quite excited by him. I like Key in a different way, but McCullum actually excites me. But he is completely untested in this type of arena. It's not like he's known for his test batting. Everyone thinks of McCullum as a one-day specialist.
He did play quite a lot of test matches, though, didn't he? He's vastly experienced in his format.
Yeah, and that's the that's the riposte to that point. But we know him for his explosive one-day play. But what I'm hoping he'll bring is that competitiveness, that positive aggression that I think we've lacked in the team, and I'm hoping he's not going to tolerate some of the limp, rather mild-mannered performances that became apparent, particularly in the Ashes and perhaps to a lesser extent in the West Indies. Ollie Robinson bowling at 70 miles an hour again, I hope won't be repeated under this regime.
Mark, kind of moving forward, new regime, new ideas, potentially new personnel. We potentially need to be a little bit patient with these guys, don't we? In terms of hitting the ground running, then you maybe not get the new manager bounce that you get in some football teams. But how patient can we be? How much time have these gentlemen got to turn things around and actually get England winning again?
Even Cullum and Key are the players or both?
Yeah, because it's not an easy summer. You know, you got New Zealand, good side. You got India for a one-off Test match, very good side, and South Africa, very up
Well,
and coming and getting back to where they used to be.
I think for the management team, obviously it's a long-term project, and Cullum's got a four-year deal, which is a long time. Because coaches come and go these days in international cricket. They're like football managers. So a 4-year contract is a commitment by England. I think Key's got a similar tenure, so you've got to give them time. I think in terms of the players, as I say, I think these are different. I mean, New Zealand are going to be a tough. If England think they can go to Lords and produce a green top to suit Anderson and Broad and Overton, well, New Zealand have got equally good as firepower in their kind of artillery. So it's going to be very interesting how England sets up the pitches for this Test series because New Zealand's strength is their pace attack, England's is their pace attack. What England's weakness is their batting. New Zealand's not really got a huge amount of weakness in the batting. As far as England's players are concerned, we've got Pope at 3. Now they put him at 3. There's been a lot of conjecture about whether they should have done that. I think for Ollie Pope, he should see it as an opportunity because if you consider yourself one of the best players in the side, you should bat 3 or 4. So Ollie Pope has an opportunity. Apparently, I haven't seen him bat this year. He has refined his technique. It's simpler. Hopefully, they will talk about him about his mentality Test match batting, which got completely frenetic. But he's got the talent. He's been put at 3, and he's got an opportunity. He needs to grasp it. I don't agree with the people saying he's never batted at 3. Here's his opportunity. He's played 20-odd tests. There's his opportunity. So he's got to be given a run.
I thought, Mark, as well, with Ollie Pope, my initial reaction was, what on earth are you doing? This guy's never been above 4 in the order, and that was only because England shoehorned him in at 4 rather than where he was at Surrey. But like you say, I've kind of turned around a little bit because I think he's a terrific player, got terrific potential, already a terrific player at county level. And you mentioned the word frenetic there. For me, Ollie Pope walks to the crease and his brain's going at 1,000,000 miles an hour. He's playing at balls that maybe he should leave alone. He scores a beautiful 24, a couple of cover drives and a couple of clips off the toes, and then he's out. And that's what we've had from Ollie Pope so far. But this is now, if he can get himself into a mindset of a number 3 where he thinks about, I don't have to be express pace. The ball's going to be hardest. If he plays an attacking shot, he's possibly going to get value for the shot anyway. But if he adds a few more leave alone shots and thinks, well, I need to be there at lunchtime and tea time and gets that kind of Test match mindset in there, then he might actually improve as a result of that, Mark.
Well, yeah, that's his opportunity. He steps up to see if he's got that mentality to do it because this is a huge opportunity to bat as England's number 3. Why not just take it? If you look at all the other candidates they talked about Josh Bohannon. Josh Bohannon's only got 4 first-class centuries. Ollie Pope's got more ability than Josh Bohannon. Simple as that. Pope seemingly has, outside of the lad at Yorkshire Brook, more natural ability than a lot of our batsmen that I've seen anyway. So why not give him a go? He has to adapt his game. But any successful player in any side, wherever they play, will have to adapt the game at some point in their career. So Pope's got to be given a run. Root's cemented at 4, great. Number 5, we'll see how long Bairstow lasts in terms of his longevity. I mean, playing 4 formats. He's got form, so he deserves his place. But Brook is there waiting. Stokes is actually 6. So in a sense, you've got the essence. We'll see how the openers go, of course. We could be 10 for 2. But we've got the essence of a top 6 there that I think they'll try and persevere with. Crawley has to get some runs. Crawley's the most vulnerable. If he flunks out, and I have no real confidence in him as an opener.
He's not vulnerable, mate. He is bulletproof. Now Key's in, that boy is bulletproof.
Maybe he's bulletproof at the moment, but if he doesn't get any runs and he keeps nicking off in the way he has been doing, then he's obviously vulnerable. The bowlers will have to wait and see. There's that many injured that, the attack is what it is, isn't it? I mean, Craig Overton's a lucky boy. I think his Brewer would have given him a bit more of a point of difference, and he's not much more different as a bat.
I heard somebody from Surrey talking about Jamie Overton, and is it Azam Mahmood, who's a bowling coach down at Surrey, had said he's not quite ready yet. He's still not quite consistent enough in terms of his lines and lengths.
He's 28 years of age. When is he going to be ready?
Well, maybe he's never going to be ready.
Well, until you play him, you don't know, do you? But he's been playing first class cricket for 10 years. He bowls at 90 miles an hour. He's fit now. He's bowling well. So if he's ever going to make the step up, it's now when England are in a bit of a flux.
Let's just stick to the batting for now. I've just jotted down here these 6 names in terms of middle order batsmen. Let's forget the openers because that's a podcast in itself, isn't it? But Bairstow, Pope, Brook, Root, Lawrence, and Stokes, Phil. To me, yes, you can pick bones in them. Yes, they haven't always performed. Yes, they could do better. And yes, they might do better. But to me, they're probably the 6 best batsmen in the country at the moment. And they probably deserve their place and a chance to shine, don't they? A chance to put right the wrongs, maybe.
Yeah, I just worry if they're all. Well, I think what we lack there is an obvious number 3, and Root at 4. I understand. I think you'd like them all coming in. I think I'd like them all coming in at 5 or 6. That's the problem.
Well, somebody tweeted me, Phil, and said, "Why don't we just call them all number 5s? So we lose the first wicket, and everybody else is at number 5."
Yeah, I mean that's my worry about Pope at 3 is that you're asking someone who's struggled. Well, perhaps struggle's not the right word, but they're not firing on all cylinders. To then adapt, as Mark rightly describes it, from a position not of dominance or of positivity, they're being asked to adapt their game whilst it's already not flourishing. And I just think the reality is that he's likely to be effectively opening for much of what we're doing. But yeah, I mean, worries about Lawrence. He's had his injuries. He got that 120 against who was it, Mark?
I watched it, mate, against Lancashire. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry, I forgot all about that. Yeah, he had a good game there. I'm not. This hamstring's recurred now twice in 2 or 3 weeks. So I think he might have to rest that. So it may well be that he's not going to make it back for this Test match. But it's nice to see him get a few runs the other day. Obviously, I'm a big fan of his, but it's difficult to. It's difficult to think of anybody else that would come in. There's been a few performances and around, but no one has really stood out. It'd be nice to see Harry Brook play. I don't know much about him, but obviously everybody's waxing lyrical about him at the moment. So it'd be nice to see.
Is it a shame that because what they've said is, or the word on the street, Huggy Bear, seems to be that Harry Brook's been told he's the reserve in the squad, and that basically the top 7 looks set to be Lees, Crawley, Pope coming in at 3, Root at 4, Bairstow's at 5, Stokes is at 6, and Folkes is the keeper. That's if you're going to pick that for the first test, the chances are, even if it's a disaster, you're going to pick that for the second test as well, because you're going to give him a couple of games, aren't you, at the start of a series? Is it unfair on Harry Brook, who's obviously a multi-dimensional cricketer and plays white ball too, to take him out of the blast, Mark, and take him away from Yorkshire?
To
carry drinks?
I don't think. Well, it's going to be taken away from the blast. He's going to be put in a different environment. No, I think it's a good thing for him to be around the England environment. I don't really. I mean, playing in the blast. He's proved what he can do in the blast. We need him to see it around the Test match environment. They may well release him for part of the blast anyway. They'll probably release him at some point to play in the blast.
England have taken Parkinson around the world twice in the last 2 winters and had him for a lot of the summers as well.
Well, there you go. I think they'll probably release him for some of the blast if he's over there and he's not playing, obviously. But I think it's right if he's with the squad for this particular Test match. They need to see a look at him in the nets. They've got a new coach coming over. They'll need to get to know him. The management team will need to get to know him. They've obviously identified him. They want to see what he's like in the nets. They'll want to see what he's like as a person, as an individual. They talk a lot these days about not just being around the ability, about being able to integrate into the group and what you bring to the group. So all those questions about your soft skills are actually just as important as your hard skills now in cricket.
Yeah.
Because if you haven't got them, then you don't get picked.
You
get picked.
And quite rightly to some degree, Mark, because you spend so much time as a cricketer with those other people. You've got to fit into that group, haven't you?
Yes and no. You don't want people to be completely awkward and recalcitrant all the time. But any good management team should be able to manage difficult individuals, because quite often your most difficult individuals are your best players. or your best
Well,
people.
that's why we put Phil in the middle.
So
So
yeah,
we
there
can
you go.
both manage him from either side.
Look, I mean, Peterson, Jeffrey Boycott in the past, even to a certain degree, James Anderson recently. You have to get the best out of these people. But you do, but ideally, you don't want too many of them because it creates chaos, as we've seen in county sides like Yorkshire in the 70s and 80s, for example. But you need the right mix. But obviously, they're looking for people with the right mentality. But every team needs a maverick, and if you cannot manage a maverick, then it says more about your poor management than it does the maverick, in my opinion. But
I'm going to ask you a question now, and I just want a yes or no answer. Any surprise to you, Phil, that Stuart Broad and Jimmy Anderson are back in the squad?
No.
Mark?
No.
We don't need to talk about them. We know all about them, don't we? And they're back in the squad. Last question when it comes to England for now. We've seen basically a succession of Matthew Fishers, Saqib Mahmood, Jofra Archer's been out for, feels like about 2 years now. Stress fractures in backs, injuries, loads and loads of kind of amateur medical thoughts of both ex-players and people like me and supporters in terms of why this happens. But it's not good, is it, Phil? From however you look at it, with all of the science around at the moment, my personal opinion is that there is actually too much science around at the moment, that they actually they're getting too gym fit and not enough cricket fit, and they're not actually playing enough because the bowling action is so strange. It's not something you do in any other walk of life, running in, going sideways and bowling a ball, because you throw a ball usually, don't you? If you're going to try and take a missile and put it over there, you throw it. So it's a completely, and the stresses that go through that body are unique to cricket. And I don't think they actually play enough, because you groove that action, you get that action stronger. And that's where you stay fit. And to me, they kind of all of this resting and wrapping people in cotton wool for 4 weeks and then playing a one-off game, I don't necessarily think it does them any good.
You use different muscles to bowl wicket keep, and anyone can tell you that. Anyone that's had the misery of the day after they've been asked to go in and keep for 40 overs or bowl 8 overs off after not having done it for God knows how long, so then come in and be walking like John Wayne the next day because you've used muscles you've not used for goodness knows how long.
I kept wicket about 25 years ago for 140 over game, and I'm still feeling it.
Still, yeah, absolutely. It's I've been the shadow of a man I was since Friday, and I'm meant to be playing tomorrow as well. And it's I mean, Mark's got strong views on this, on the number of overs they bowl. I do wonder if we are now so concentrated on being as quick and squeezing every bit of pace out of players we can, that we are adding to the issue. But I'm no sports scientist, and the difficulty with this conversation is that there are, and England have plenty of them, of experts who are there meant to be giving top end advice on this subject. But it's difficult to understand how someone like Jofra Archer can pick up a stress fracture. Is it a lumbar stress fracture? And that either not be detected or develop whilst he's recovering from before. It just doesn't make sense. Either it should have been detected earlier, or they're doing something wrong in his recovery. There's something that needs explanation, but and I've cross-examined a few experts in my time, but I definitely feel I'd need to do some brushing up before I ask any questions on this subject.
I know I don't want to name the county or the people involved in this. It's not fair, but I know that at one county there was a bit of a standoff between strength and conditioning coach and the bowling coach and co. Because of what I've just said, that the bowling coaches wanted a bowler to be fit and be able to bowl, and it seemed the strength and conditioning coach wanted them to go through X amount of exercises in the gym every day and be fit in terms of having a six-pack and wide, broad shoulders. And they don't necessarily meet in the middle, Mark, do they? There's a difference between being all ripped and muscly and being bowling fit. And I know you go to the gym a lot, and you're very ripped and muscly.
Well, I used to do a lot of bowling, but not muscly. But there is. I think it's a complex debate. I think let's not get into eulogising about the good old days, because bowlers have always got injured. Dennis Lillee.
We forget that, don't we?
Yeah, we forget that. I mean, there've always been injuries, and bowlers. Sometimes people like Chris Old, Mike Hendrick, Chris Old could get injured, could walk into his car. So I mean, people have always been injured, and it may well be that people like Saj and Archer are just injury prone. But I think we've got to a situation where nobody really knows what's best for the players. So you do have these strength and conditioning coaches. They're in the gym. I mean, they've got 12-month contracts. They're in the gym all winter. They're in, so why? It's just so they do need to bowl more. I think the other argument is that's quite an interesting argument actually about Mahmood. So I'd say, I've had a conversation with somebody on Twitter the other day. He'd only bowled 25 first-class matches and so forth. But they said, well, he's been in so many 2020 leagues and he's been to the Big Bash and then he went to England. And they are playing more formats. And whether that puts an extra strain on the body, who knows? And whether the 2020, whether it is more hyped up and they're running around more, I don't know. But it does. I mean, to me, they don't bowl enough. That's absolutely paramount to me. If you are a bowler, Phil's right. You are using different muscles. It's about repetition. You need to repetition. Your body needs to get used to it. So if you come out of a gym and start bowling, you can't. Your body's not going to be used to it. You're going to break down. You need to do it slightly more. And stress fractures don't. Sometimes you get an acute stress fracture, just happens like that. But very often, stress fractures, they develop over time. That's why bowlers are scanned more these days, because they pick them up. So God knows what they were doing with Archer. I mean, Mahmood's been scanned to death, so they probably picked these up reasonably early, which is good for him. But if they haven't picked Archers up, God, I just don't know. But for me, they need to do more bowling. I don't want them bowling 60 overs a week. I don't want 66 back-to-back matches. But the body needs to get used to bowling more. And to me, that's not what they're doing. If you look at all the best bowlers, they've all said in the past, all the best bowlers, they've all enjoyed bowling and they've learned how to bowl. Their actions have been refined. And they learn, and they get bowling fit by bowling. And let's face it, when we talk about stress and strain, the West Indian fast bowlers, they used to come over county cricket and bowl 700, 800 overs. Malcolm Marshall, Joel Garner, Sylvester Clarke. They never got injured.
Well, we talk about Stuart Broad and Jimmy Anderson. They've bowled ridiculous numbers of overs in their careers, and whenever we talk about them being rested, I mean, I'm kind of a bit of a believer in actually rotating them now through the twilight of their career. But you can guarantee, as soon as you say to Stuart Broad or Jimmy Anderson, we're not going to play you at Lords, we'll play you in the next one instead, they'll say, well, I want to play at Lords. They want to play the next game. They want to play in bowl.
Games. They want to play all the games. They can. They're too old to play all the games. But we get that. But, you don't want to be flogging particularly fast bowlers. You don't want to be flogging them to death. There's a happy medium to be found. But, you've got to find that medium, and it's gone too far at the moment. They're not bowling enough overs, essentially. And that's it. Mahmood's played 25 first-class games. He bowls in shorter formats. So, they're not bowling. They're not bowling fit. The bodies aren't right for bowling. They may be fit young men, but they're not bowlers. And that's what I think is the essence of why it's happening. So
I mean, I feel for Saqib. I feel for Matty Fisher as well. They've kind of just got their chances, and now they're injured for the rest of the season. But thinking about Fish at Yorkshire, I don't think he's actually played a full season. Because there's always an injury or a niggle of some kind. And
you can. I mean, the other thing is to say, you get people on Twitter played too much county cricket. They bowl too much in county cricket. Fisher's only bowled in one innings. Mahmood's only bowled in one match. So there's not the direct correlation. And actually, bowlers like Tom Bailey, who plays for Lancashire, can play every game and not pick up an injury, or certainly not a back injury. And again, he bowls a lot of overs. I'm
not going to ask you this question because I know you've been to cricket this season because I was sat behind you. But have you been to see any county cricket yet, Phil?
No, not been there. No, I've been streaming a lot. Been watching a lot of the streams, which has been really handy. And I've been It's amazing how many people don't know about the streams, because the number of people I've had to refer to them, oh, can I watch it there? And they've been well into it thereafter. Even the kids actually have been into it. So the streams have been an invaluable
Yeah,
source of.
I've tried to retweet that grid thing every now and again, because you can put more than one match on your screen at any one time, which is quite nice as well. But
The only irritating thing is Warwickshire who demand that you sign up to their data list again. Another one wanting to harvest my data to send me adverts for stuff I'm not going to buy.
I think I've got your data. If anybody wants Phil's data, I can sell it.
I've got the data as well.
I put out a tweet yesterday to say, because it was obviously the end of the first sort of tranche of county championship matches, about halfway through the season, and the summer's not even started yet. But anyway, that's another point for another day. But I said that I'd loved it. I've been watching it on the streams. I've been to Headingley. I've been and it's I love 4-day cricket. I love the county championship, and there's been some tremendous matches. Got a lot of people liking that and making comments and stuff. There were a few people who said, I found it a bit boring. Too many draws, too many high-scoring draws. This is, and I wonder what your thoughts on that are, Mark, because I think, there have been some fairly docile tracks. There have been teams batting out fairly comfortably in the fourth innings. The heavy roller presumably has a part to play, and that kind of deadens the track a little bit. And maybe we could look at not using the heavy roller in county championship cricket. But one of the things I always think when people say the scores are too big, the bowlers are finding it too hard. For most of the last 5 years, people have been saying the bowlers find it too easy. So let's give the batsman a few runs now and again. But B, when we go to places and England concede sort of 500 in the first innings and they find it really hard to get a wicket, people always say, well, they find it too easy in the county championship. They need to find ways to take wickets. Well, at the moment, we're giving them that challenge, aren't we? And we're trying to make bowlers better in that regard.
Yeah, I think obviously, county cricket gets blamed for everything. If England win, it's never county cricket's reason for winning. If England lose, it always is. So that's historically always been the case. I think the tracks this year have been very, very good. They've been like roads, some of the ones I've seen. And you've had to be a very good bowler to get the wickets, which is great. Hassan Ali come to Lancashire and he won us some games because he's an excellent bowler. Matt Parkinson's taking wickets. And yes, I watched the Kent game versus Lancashire right at the beginning of the season at Canterbury. And Darren Stevens was basically, you could play him literally with a stick of rhubarb. There was nothing going on in the pitch. And he didn't bowl him in the second innings. So cricket is very much a game of environment. And the pitches this year have been remarkably good for the time of year. And I don't disagree with that. I think it's great that we're getting better pitches. But my gripe is that these pitches don't break up because they water them too much. So they don't deteriorate. They don't break up. If you look at a first day pitch at Old Trafford and then look at a day 4 pitch, there's hardly any difference in it.
Well, when you water them, Mark, and then you put the heavy roller on them, you're effectively compacting them and making them almost like first day pitches.
They never break up. So you need a pitch to naturally deteriorate. And I think that's the problem we've got. We're getting better pitches. They're too slow. And that's probably to do with the time of the year and historical things in England. But if you're going to get good pitches and they're slow wickets, you need them to deteriorate naturally. Otherwise, you're going to get 500 plays 500. And so that's what we need to work on. And stop watering the pitches too much. That we're absolutely obsessed with making the pitches as compact as possible because we're frightened to death of them breaking up. Let them deteriorate naturally, and that would produce more interesting cricket. Because I think the pitches I'm broadly in agreement what they've done with the pitches this year. But when in one match, I think it's when we played Yorkshire, wasn't it? Yeah, it was when we played Yorkshire. Every single team in the first division in the first innings got 500, and that's the first time that had happened since 2 divisions. So that tells you that possibly the pitch is probably too good and too slow for this time of the year, and they're not deteriorating. So yeah, it's been some good cricket, and I've enjoyed it, and I've enjoyed. Lancashire's gone to 4 days each time. I saw a 4-day game at Kent, 4-day game at Old Trafford. So it's been some good finishes, but you need to have really top-class bowlers to win matches. We haven't got a huge amount of those in first-class cricket, but I would like the wickets to deteriorate more natural than they are doing at the moment.
But that point you make there about not having top class bowlers in county cricket, surely the job of the ECB and of county cricket is to generate the need to be a top class bowler, and
Yeah, of course.
and Phil, that's the challenge. It's surely the challenge is for the bowlers to get better and to make themselves a little bit more of a contest on 500 plays 500 tracks, and
Yeah.
B, for the captains to use a bit of imagination and to hone their skills a bit more too.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's why it's right that these pitches have been prepared this way, so that we can see teams have to work harder to get their wickets, because rolling in at, with the dibbly dobblers at 75 to 80 miles an hour and rolling teams over isn't. I mean, I always preferred bowling. I'm not overly interested in batting. That's for other people to worry about. So I didn't mind seeing loads of wickets fall, but it doesn't lend itself to strong developed batting standards, and therefore it doesn't lend itself to a strong England team. And bowling standards as well. So with these better pitches, I think inevitably lead to an improvement. But it's going to be rough going for a while, because at the moment this is new to, or newer to, players are used to, pitches that are going to help them out. So there's going to be a period of adjustment which we've got to go through, and there might be some boring games, but ultimately a little bit of tough love, the players will respond, and the cream will hopefully rise.
I don't want you to use the word money, tradition, loyalty, anything like that in your answers. But now it's time to franchise cricket, says KP. The words loyalty, tradition, and all of those kind of history, and even money these days, and probably all the way through cricket's history, money's been important. You have to pay the bills, don't you? But those things like tradition, history, and loyalty is what actually matters most, isn't it? For a cricket fan, you get your team and you stick with them through thick and thin. That's what sport's all about. Tradition, that's something to be celebrated, learnt from, and stuck up on pavilion walls and looked after. So I don't mind if you use any of those words in your answers to this question. But Mark, KP wants to take it down to 12 teams to franchise it. I'm not sure he actually quite technically knows what the word franchise means. But is it time to reduce 18 counties? And if you say yes, then you're off this podcast. But I'm not trying to influence your answer.
I don't think it's time to reduce 18 counties. I think KP throws lots of different sticks to get a response, and and if you say enough things enough times, you're going to get one thing right sometime. It's totally wrong on this. I don't think franchising is going to suddenly miraculously produce a better England side. Tradition is important. The county championship and history county clubs have been going 200 years. You can't just suddenly stop that. It doesn't work like that. You just, you've got great grounds. I mean, you've got Taunton down here in the West Country, superb ground. One of the best grounds, well, the best ground for county cricket, in my opinion, in the country. So what you're going to do, you're going to start franchising that. What about the Cheltenham? So there's all different equations and different nuances that he simply doesn't get. And we're not like Australia. Australia is a huge country where you have certain states, and they have better weather as well. So and their tradition is to have 8, 9, 10 games and play the states. They're not going to suddenly reduce their states. So I don't think we shouldn't be saying because everybody else has got less teams, then suddenly we should have less teams. Homogenization is boring. You want some difference. What I do think is right in, and I do think this it needs addressing, is that, and I've said this consistently, that we do need to raise the quality, and we do need the best playing the best more. My opinion is that county cricket was best maybe about 15 years ago, 10, 15 years ago. We had better overseas players, we had better cold patch, we had better pitches, we had better players coming through. I think a lot of those things have gone away now with central contracts, with overseas not being here much. We've diluted, the quality's been diluted slightly. We've got less people participating in the game. So there is that natural decline in standards, I think, that has occurred. It hasn't helped with the scheduling and playing on bad pitches, which has reduced the quality even more. So we need to sort that out. But equally, we need to recognise that if England are going to get better, then you do need the best playing the best. And I think going back to 2 divisions, playing on better pitches, you've already seen that happening a little bit. And we need to look at a structure which promotes that in the future, but a structure that doesn't cut off every single county. So if you are Northampton, you have got the ability to get to the first division. We don't want to cut off those avenues because those clubs produce players, and it may well be in the future that they continue producing players. And a little bit like football, those players move on to bigger clubs and they're loaned back for a season, and that's how the system naturally evolves. And the talent does get to the top, like you get in football to a kind of degree, if you know what I mean. So he's wrong in franchising. That's completely wrong, and it'll just disinvest the game and disenfranchise complete areas of the country. However, he is right that we do need to look at standards. And me watching a lot of cricket over the years, I've watched nearly 400 first-class games live because I'm a sad man. I would say that standards have definitely declined. So I would like to look at something different that redresses that balance, but at the same time retaining an 18-county structure.
You know, every competition should always look at trying to raise standards. I don't think it's how you do that. And you mentioned kind of the times of the games. You mentioned pitches. There's a whole load of factors that play into that, aren't there? Which potentially aren't that relevant to this discussion, really. But in terms of the word franchise, Phil, franchise is where you create a product and you sell it off to people to then run it for you, effectively, don't you? So you sell off the teams, and there is no money in county championship cricket. We keep talking about the fact that everybody says subsidy. I mean, I think the counties to a large degree earn their fees and stuff from the ECB, but they get that free from the ECB to prop up county championship cricket, because county championship cricket works as the foundation for international cricket, which makes the money. So the test matches that you sell the tickets, you sell the TV rights for the test matches, you get the money for that, and then that is fed into the county game because they produce the test cricketers to have the test matches in the first place. But there is not going to be a Saudi billionaire or a Texan millionaire or a Australian guy who fancies dabbling in English cricket who's going to buy a county championship franchise to get rich quick, is he? Or richer quicker? You've muted yourself, Phil. These are wonderful words. Wonderful words you're saying there, and we couldn't hear a word of them.
Yeah, I know. I was agreeing with you. This is why I think KP. I think he's just spouting the word franchise because he thinks it's the clever solution to it without possibly knowing quite what the ramifications for it are.
Just before you go on though, what he then follows it up with was, let's get, I can't even remember, 3 or 5 overseas and pay them big bucks. Well, where's that money coming from?
Where are the overseas coming from anyway?
Exactly, because they're playing international cricket elsewhere. So, are you suggesting that these millionaires are going to come in and prop up, buy these franchises? Then you're suggesting they're going to be spending huge amounts of money on bringing in Shaheen Shah Afridi for a full season, etc., etc., etc. It just doesn't stack up, Phil.
No, it doesn't, and this is why I'll listen to anything that will improve the situation of cricket in this country. And if someone can demonstrate that a thought out and fully developed franchise system would do it, I would listen to it. I wouldn't dismiss it out of hand. So if KP wants to suggest, or anybody else wants to suggest a franchise system, cost it out, and and put it out in a paper that we can look at, and then we can judge it on its merits rather than just spouting in 140 odd characters the word franchise every so often. It seems to me that it's a no-brainer, isn't it? Quality everywhere needs to improve. It doesn't even need to be said. So how do you do it? Well,
and that's in any walk of life, not just sport, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, there's not a sport in the country not trying to improve the quality of its participants. There's not a sport on the planet, not trying to improve the quality of its participants and its financial position. So how do you do it? Well, KP's suggestion seems to really be, if you take the word franchise out of it, less matches, people, the better players are concentrated into stronger quality games, and that'll produce a better England team. I mean, there might be merit to that, there might not be. For me, I think the solution actually rests in trying to encourage more of the 60 million people, 70 million people in this country to play cricket. And that's at the minute where I think we're missing people that are being attracted to football, possibly off to other sports, the natural athletes that we could turn into England cricketers are going off to other sports or other pastimes. And the way you sort that out, I think, is actually by increasing the number of counties playing and making it a sport that pulls people in, so that, you know, even if you've got a third, fourth, fifth tier, Bedfordshire versus God knows who, these players are playing, they're getting into the sport, and therefore they've got an opportunity to move up, as Mark described, moving to the bigger counties as they go along. So for me, it's not franchises, it's widening the sport and widening participation.
The other thing, Phil, as well, off the back of that, obviously, is the state schools or clubs using local clubs to get cricketers from non-private school backgrounds, and also, the black and minority ethnic population of the country play a huge amount of club cricket, but that isn't reflected in the professional game. That has to be looked at too, to give opportunities.
Just go and look at the England 11 we discussed earlier on, and look how ethnically diverse that team is.
Yeah. Absolutely, and just to round off on that, Mark. To me, I know I totally agree with everything both of you have said. You know, the best playing the best gets the best cricket. You know, you can then judge people on that, etc., etc., etc. I quite like Rob Key's suggestion when he was on Sky. Before he took the current job, he talked about having a top division with two divisions running side by side underneath that. So all 18 counties are playing the same number of games, and then if you get promoted into the top division and come down a tier if you get relegated. I don't think that's necessarily a bad idea. 3 divisions, however you want to do it. There's ways and means of actually setting up the structure, isn't there? But to me, if you actually reduce the number of top teams, you're sending a message out to the UK, Mark, that there are less professional opportunities for people. So anybody who is any good at sport, and one of those sports is cricket, you're thinking, well, have I got more chance playing cricket, or have I got more chance playing football when there are 92 clubs to play for, or have I got more chance playing another sport? And also, if you're reducing the number of top teams, say you take away Durham out of the equation, does that mean Ben Stokes and Mark Wood go off and do something completely different? 2 of the most popular England cricketers of current times. If you take away Somerset, does that mean Marcus Trescothick never plays for England because he chooses a different career route and does something else because it's too far to drive to Bristol or something else to do what he's going to do? You've got to think about those things, that you've got to grow the game. You almost need to put it under people's noses rather than actually take it further away from them.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I wouldn't be in any shape or form looking at reducing the amount of county clubs. I don't think they need to do that. I think your point about reducing the amount of top clubs in the top division, I'm not sure if that'll put people off playing cricket. I don't think when you're 14 you necessarily start thinking that particularly. And I think you have to recognise as well that there's always been 92 football clubs. They have a lot.
The thing with that, though, Mark, is that if you've got, say, 10 top tier clubs, there are obviously 110 shirts then available any one week in the championship. 18, you've got nearly twice that many. So you are limiting the opportunities of playing top tier cricket, aren't you?
Well, we're not saying reduce 18 counties. What we're saying is that we need to look at ways of, the best players playing the best players more, whether that's in 2 divisions as we've got now or 3 divisions or whatever. I don't think that really matters. I don't think that's going to put people off playing the game initially. People have ambitions. When you're a sports person, you have ambitions. You think you can get to the top. You're not going to be put off by that. If you really like the game and the club that you go to is inclusive, whether that's be, you're starting at a local club like Phil's club, Hornchurch, or my club in the Central Lancs League, not Central Leagues anymore, Haywood. As long as that club's inclusive, as long as it's got good links to the county club, I don't think 12-year-olds think, 10 years I might not be playing in the first division. I don't think that it's about catching people's attention to the game. I think we have to recognise one other thing as well. However much we can grow cricket on a recreational basis, it's never, ever going to be the same scale as football, ever.
Oh, no.
And that's the difference. That's why we've got 92 clubs. That's historical as well. So I don't think that's an issue. I think if you get a better product and people can make more money at the top, I don't know, England win more. You know, the England team is still the kind of seen as a pinnacle. Doesn't matter if there's 3 divisions, and Ben Stokes would probably have been at Durham, and so would Mark Wood. They may have transferred, but I think it's getting that product right. It's getting it right, playing it at the right time. I don't really favour reducing the amount of games, but if we have to reduce the amount of game by a couple, if it means we play it in the bloody summer, fine. But we have to also recognise the vagaries of the English weather. You can get 3 games washed out like that, and then you're suddenly playing. You've got 10 games, you're playing 7. Those factors need to be put in, but it's a summer game. We've just said about 10 minutes ago we've finished 6 games, and we're at the 20th of May.
I think some teams have played 7, haven't they?
Well, one team's played. Well, 6 games at 20th of May. We've got 8 more to play, and 4 of them in September. That's the crux of the issue, that we're not actually putting it centre and front of what we do. There's too much cricket being played, and it's being pushed and squeezed. And we need to put it in the summer months where it's going to be played. But until we get to that point, we're always going to have these debates about quality. We're going to have these debates about structures until we put it front and centre. And hopefully now Key's in. They're saying they're having the red ball review. They say they're going to prioritise it. Then they're going to have to really back that up. And the only way I can see them backing that up is by getting rid of a competition. That's it, because we play too much cricket. Simple as that.
Which one are you getting rid of then?
Well, we're not going to get rid of the 100 because that's here. It's an anomaly. Nobody else plays the bloody thing, but it's an anomaly. You'd have to get rid of the 50 over competition or play it as a cup competition to make more space. That's all. That's what you're going to have to do, because it's at the moment there's far too much cricket. You know, we play 4 competitions, and you get 4 competitions in what is 5 months. It's madness. Nowhere else does that in the world, and we're doing it because we're insatiable about. Well, Tom Harrison was insatiable about making as much money as possible and getting these huge contracts in TV. And at the same time, the game is disintegrating in front of his eyes.
But why don't we play the 50 over game in April? I mean, it doesn't have that priority as far as I'm concerned. If the weather affects it, you've got a reduced game. So be it. We've got shorter formats; it can cope. For me, it's easier. I think the shorter form is much more suited to the more variable weather in April and at the end of the summer.
And also, I mean, the other issue is that most players don't. I mean, in the past, they used to learn 1 day cricket and 50 over cricket. They learn the 1 day cricket and 20 over cricket and just transfer it to 50 over cricket now. So to a certain degree, it's becoming a redundant, almost format. I mean, there was talk about it in the past getting rid of it, but I don't think they should get rid of it personally.
There was a lot of talk about it, and then England won the World Cup, and it kind of
then it all disappeared, doesn't it? But most players learn in 2020 just transfer the skills to 50 over. Yeah. So
I've got to admit the format that interests me least is the 50 over. I love the 4-day stuff because that has a narrative going through it all. I think the 50 over is has become kind of caught in the middle between T20 and county championship, and has lost its identity to a degree. And I wouldn't go against having a knockout tournament or something like that in April or something like that, just to involve maybe the minor counties and to make it a little bit more exciting. But
it's the format that's most relatable to most weekend cricketers. So there's value to it. I mean, I don't know. I'm not aware of too many 2020 competitions. Certainly not widely played at weekends. So if we're trying to keep everybody playing basically the same game, there is merit in keeping the 40-50 over game, because it's what we're all playing at the weekend.
Final question. New Zealand taking on England, 3 test match series. What's the score going to be, Phil?
Well, we'll lose Lord's test match because we always do. I'm just looking at our bowling attack. I'm struggling to see us take 20 wickets more than once this series. So I'm thinking it might be 1-1 on a drawn test.
How about you, Mark?
I think this test series is really hard to call, to be honest with you. England could get a bounce factor. Anderson could be worried. I mean, New Zealand have shown a little bit of a sign of decline recently. They drew at home to Bangladesh. They've had a little bit of a shake. But Jameson is a great bowler, though. I'm going to go. I'm going to stick my neck out, and I say it's going to be a brave new dawn, and England are going to win this Test series.
Blimey. I've got a horrible feeling New Zealand will win it myself. I'm going to go 2-1 New Zealand. But we will find out, won't we, over the next few weeks. It's played throughout the month of June, 2 fairly early on in June, and then 1 bringing up the rear towards the end of June as well at Headingley. So looking forward to that, seeing Test match action back in the UK. Then we've got India to follow, and then South Africa coming in towards the end of the summer as well. Mark and Phil, I'm sure I'll speak to you about all of that and more as we go through the rest of the summer. Thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
And thanks everybody out there for watching as well. And we have been the Cricket Badger Podcast. I've been James, he's been Phil, he's been Mark, and we'll see you again very soon indeed. Cheers, everybody.